subscribe to that. Welcome to the talk show with one and only yours truly, Jason Takhtadjian, here in the KC24 CBS 47 studios. I am joined by a very special guest today. We have had Stephanie Berugian on this show before, and she was with KC24, but this is the first time we're going to be talking to someone who is currently at KC24 with me, and it is none other than Chief Photographer Kevin Mahan. Kevin, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on the talk show. I'm happy to be a guest.
I'm happy to have you on, and you are an honorary Armenian.
I am. I am.
For folks who don't know, you are Colombian, correct?
Yeah, I'm half Colombian, but the Armenian comes from, it's a joke that all Armenians tell me, every time you visit the homeland, you become 5% Armenian. I had been lucky enough to go over with Stephanie to cover the Armenian medical mission 4 times to Armenia, 1 time to Beirut. So I'm a 5% Western Armenian. So just really eye-opening, life-changing experiences. And in fact, this is the 10th anniversary of Stephanie and I going over, first time for me, to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the Armenian genocide. Wow. So that was my first trip in April of 2015, and got to experience Armenia like most people don't get to experience. Right. And we actually got to go to the official commemoration, which was crazy because Vladimir Putin came from Russia.
Right.
He was like a rock star there in Armenia. This is 10 years ago. I don't know what it is like now under the current climate, but it was a long, very somber ceremony, obviously, and just to be able to be there and witness that was pretty incredible. Simultaneously, that's when they debuted the Armenian genocide statue and commemorative,
the monument
there at Fresno State. So it was kind of synced up to commemorate with both of those, and pretty incredible that Fresno State has something like that on its campus. But of course, not a surprise because of the Armenian, connection with our community.
That's amazing. And I really want to jump right into this and talk to you about that first trip that you went to Armenia. But I want to reel it back. Maybe if there's some folks that are watching this that, maybe are getting introduced to Kevin Mahan for the first time, want to know a little bit about you as far as how you got into the news industry. What were you doing first and how you kind of transitioned here to Fresno and what you were doing here?
Well, when I graduated from college, I was probably like everybody else at the time that was a Dodger fan. I wanted to be the next Vin Scully.
Yeah.
So I wanted to do baseball play-by-play. That was my ultimate dream. As we know, as we navigate through life, our dreams kind of change course. Yes. I actually worked in politics for the first, 6 months that I was out of school, because I had a political science degree as well.
Okay.
As well as broadcasting. So did that. Then I worked at a sports radio network. Then I got my first jump into TV up in Reno, Nevada, and got in and was a weekend news video editor. From there, worked my way up to sports anchor, and because I was a good shooter, I became part news photographer, part sports reporter, and then when I met my wife in Reno, we moved to Fresno for her job. I just I'm a good connector of people, and I was able to use my connections to get a job here in TV locally at KC24, June of 2000. 25 years later, I'm still here.
Wow, that's amazing.
So that's in a nutshell.
In a nutshell,
right? The abbreviated version.
And I will say so myself, you being the chief photographer, you have definitely helped not just me, but a lot of other reporters with their, storytelling and, different camera shots. I remember one story we did, we had multiple camera shots for an interview. The kid was sitting in a car and you shot the interview through the side mirror. And I thought that was really creative and unique. And, just ask you, you treat this as an art form as much as it is a job, because this is, like I said, an art, you edit, you put together a camera, and it's like a vision that you put together.
Well, what I always like to say to people is this beats having a real job. And I mean it in the way that, not that I'm mocking it, but because I really, truly don't think I'm working. You know what I mean? I enjoy coming to work. I have a passion for what I do, and I will, I'm always 100%. So you take all that into effect, and I really just love to be creative and be a storyteller. And I don't really like to do the mundane. So I do try and make the extra effort when I'm out there telling stories, whether it be by myself or with a reporter like yourself or anybody else on the staff. And what I really do like, being here for 25 plus years, I'm older than some of the employees that I work with in terms of just my TV career. Yeah. But you young people keep me young. And that's really like, it's a breath of fresh air having all you guys in here, because that 20-something energy, it really does keep me going.
It's awesome, and you have that 20-something energy too. So we feed off of each other with this. It's amazing, and I'm sure throughout all these years that you've worked here at the station, you've worked with a lot of strong reporters who have also turned out to be anchors. And I obviously think of Stephanie Brugian whenever I think of you and just all the work that you guys have done. And before I talk about that first Armenia trip, I want to just ask you, because I'm curious, do you remember the first time that you and Stephanie worked together, or what story, or just kind of what that interaction was like? How you guys' relationship?
It's funny, because she was, for the longest time, we were like on different shifts, but I knew, Stephanie. I'll rewind that back. I was working one night shift when I first started, and she was always very welcoming and nice. And so before we were paired together when she got moved to an early show. And so I couldn't say specifically the first time, but I know that we really did work well together. Yeah. And I think that's because she considered me like that annoying little brother that she never had. And so I can tell you that Stephanie and I's work relationship is probably one of the easiest work relationships that I've had in my entire life, because her and I get along so well, and going across the world many times. Exactly. We never really have gotten into a fight or a tangle with each other. And so that it's just been a great union working with her, and we've created some fantastic stories.
I would say so myself. I've literally told you off camera before this show began that I was just watching through your YouTube channel, because you documented and made sure to post every single package that you guys did in Armenia, and just showcasing, whether it's in main Yerevan or going to the villages and the border villages next to Azerbaijan. You guys did so much as far as stories, and we're going to jump into that, but I got to ask you, when they came to you and to Stephanie to the station with the idea of doing that first Armenia medical mission trip, what was your thinking and thought process like
I'll reverse it to you. So they actually went the year, I want to say it was 1 or 2 years before, with another photographer. George Garnica went with Stephanie, and I remember them broaching it with me, but I don't think I was in a position to make the trip. So George went, and the only thing I remember about that trip is there were a couple of stories that they did that stuck to my mind, but I just also remember that George was in our fantasy football league, and he was having problems putting his lineup because, we're talking 2012 Armenia, and trying to navigate the internet and just the way things were. So that's what I remember from that first trip. So then the next 2 years later comes along, and Stephanie's like, I really want you to come with me. And they're like, are you cool going to Armenia? And I'm like, yeah, it sounds like it'd be a great experience. Yeah. Let me make sure my passport is ready to go. It was. And we went, and to go for the commemoration for the 100th anniversary, the Armenian genocide. I will say that I did, before I moved to the Valley, had a small knowledge of Armenians, because in Las Vegas, while there's not a large Armenian population, at the time, Jerry Tarkanian was running things over at UNLV, so people knew who Armenians were. Yeah. And I did know Armenian folks, and they always say, oh, Kevin, you'll know an Armenian because the last name is IAN. That was the beginning of my Armenian education. So I did know a few Armenians in Las Vegas. So I had an idea of what Armenians and who they were, and a little bit about their culture. But obviously being here and meeting friends and doing things on my job, that kind of connected me even more. So I was very familiar with what happened in 1915 and the atrocities, and just kind of flabbergasted that it took President Biden until he was president for him to actually recognize Turkey's role in the Armenian genocide. It kind of blows my mind. I mean, I know why it's been done because politics is politics, but to me it was kind of a no-brainer. But
well, it seems like a no-brainer,
but
right?
you know, Turkey is, I understand, an ally to the Western world, and there's key strategic things. I mean, it's above my pay grade, but you know, knowing and having so many Armenian friends, and just kind of knowing the backstory of what happened to their family and how some of them are lucky to even be here because they had great grandparents and grandparents that were survivors and made it out alive.
Yeah, I mean, I have a story from my dad's side of the family, on my grandpa's side. His mother, so my great-grandmother, was one of about 6 or 7 siblings, and she was one of 2 siblings that survived. And they went through the Syrian death marches, and that's how my grandpa ended up being born in Aleppo, and that's how my family has.
So then they survived in the desert and were rescued probably by the French legionnaires there.
That's right.
Because that's one thing I did learn about when I was in Lebanon, because we went to a small town right near the border with Syria, that still mostly Armenian. It's like a Christian enclave.
I think it's Burj Hamid. Is that the one?
No, that's actually a neighborhood in Beirut.
In Beirut, right?
This city, gosh, I have it on my YouTube channel in one of the stories that Stephanie and I did. But so it's really interesting because the city's kind of like in 4 sectors. There's a Protestant church, an Armenian church, a Catholic church, and then an Armenian Catholic church. So the way the town is built, and it might be like 3,000 or 4,000 residents, but it's like 4 quadrants, but it's all Christian.
Right.
And what's amazing is they had this restaurant there. It's like one of the biggest restaurants in the Middle East, and we went to dinner there one night, and it was pretty dead until sundown. And when sundown happened, that's when all the Muslims came in because it was during Ramadan. So once the sun went down and they could break fast, they went to this restaurant. So by the time we left in the night, it was, and you know, there was Muslims and Christians coming together, and there were no incidents and no beefs, just kind of enjoying and dining under one roof.
Right, and that's like the perfect scenario, right? Is that everyone can kind of get along, and that's the ultimate goal,
and I think that kind of is how it is in Lebanon too. Because the Armenians have representation in the government, even though the government is very fractured. And really, the Armenian medical offices that we went to in Beirut, they not only helped Armenians, they helped whoever needed the help.
That's right.
You know, so a lot of the neighborhood folks that were not Christian, that were not Armenian, benefited greatly from not only the work that they're doing, but the charity work that the Armenian doctors from Fresno who came to help out.
And that's so sweet to see, just that there were Fresno doctors from the Central Valley really coming together to provide these sort of resources to countries like Lebanon, to countries like Armenia, especially in those villages that otherwise wouldn't have that accessibility, wouldn't have that sort of funding. And it's really cool to see that. I think when we talked about it with Stephanie, KC24 was the only TV station from the U.S. that was there during the 100th anniversary of the Armenian genocide. Yes,
and it was crazy because it was media frenzy. There were a lot of different media organizations. I mean, it was a huge event. Not only in that part of the world, but I believe in Europe as well. And of course, you know, because Armenia and the diaspora has, you know, spread out. I think there's more Armenians that live outside of Armenia than actually in Armenia. But the diaspora has, you know, many pockets, whether it be in Syria, whether it be in Lebanon, whether it be in France, Sweden. I mean, they're just obviously Glendale. I mean,
where I was born.
Seriously. So, and so it was just a worldwide event. To be able to witness that, it was pretty amazing. I witnessed nothing like it.
Yeah, I mean it was a rainy day, right?
It was raining. As I said, God was crying tears of sadness.
Yeah, and that's a really powerful story that I was watching, because that was a Fresno family, right, that had traveled, kind of not exactly with you guys, but kind of with the whole the whole group, right, of coming to Armenia for that specific reason.
Yes, and I think Rafi was the one. Was his name. He brought his son, and his son was like 11 or 12, but the impact that it had in his life, because I'm sure he's heard the stories from his dad and his grandparents, maybe even his great-grandparents. So one thing, though, that I will say that I really, going to Armenia was a big deal for a lot of the Armenians here, but I never really knew how many Armenians in the Valley have more of a tie to Syria and Lebanon until I went on this last trip. I remember posting an Instagram story where I went, we had the pleasure of touring a Dutch orphanage set up by the Dutch back in the probably like the 1930s or whatever for Armenian orphans. And I did like a little video tour that I posted to my Instagram reels. And one of my friends, who I knew was Armenian, she immediately sent me a direct message and she's like, oh my goodness, that orphanage is where my grandmother was taken to after the genocide. And she survived, was taken to that orphanage, was adopted, and a few years later was brought to the United States.
What a story.
Yeah.
I mean that's just so amazing. And to hear those type of stories, and that's not the only type of story that I've heard, like of that ilk. There's so many stories that you see these, kids that are being saved with these orphanages.
I mean, look at just the impact on even pop culture. The Los Angeles band System of a Down.
Yes.
That is an Armenian rock group that, I mean, like Serj Tankian, he's from Lebanon originally.
Yes.
And was able to come over to the United States. I believe the other members of the band were as well. So they have that Western Armenia tie to Lebanon, and it's pretty amazing to see.
And as sports fans, both you and I, we're aware of what Steve Kerr's family has also done in Lebanon during 1915, during the genocide, saving those orphans, thousands of orphans. And it turns out one of my second or third cousins, one of those families, they're connected to the orphans that were saved by Kerr's family. And it's just so amazing that if it wasn't for me even going to San Francisco and doing that story, I wouldn't have learned that, little detail from my family.
That I did not know, because I know Steve Kerr's family has history, especially in Lebanon. I mean, unfortunately, his dad was killed by terrorists at American University when he was, I think, maybe not almost to college. Maybe he was, I think, 15 or so.
It was something like
that. But,
what
an impact that would have on your life. But to still be the empathetic, caring person that he is, just shows you the way the family was brought up and how good they were to help folks in positions of difficulty.
Absolutely. And he also turned into one of the best coaches of all time as well. So that's an added layer to just seeing somebody.
Anybody that gets punched by Michael Jordan in practice got to be a tough guy.
Well, he has to. Exactly. Let's shift gears back to the 100th anniversary in Armenia, because when I was watching some of the packages that you and Stephanie had put together, I did notice that System of a Down was performing as well. And I'm sure that was quite the experience for you guys to see in the Republican Square, right?
I can tell you, I never thought I would start a news package with a natural sound of System of a Down jamming out one of their biggest hits
in the middle of Armenia.
Exactly, and it was I think music is a universal language, and they're a big enough group to where they're known in the United States and in Europe, but obviously they're going to be known in Armenia. And Armenians are very familiar with a lot of American culture, obviously. But for them to be able to do that at that time, it was fantastic. It was pouring rain, but that didn't stop the crowd. There must have been at least 5,000 to 7,000 people, and it really was a cool experience. You could feel the energy from the stage, energy from the crowd. It was fantastic.
And what was your first impressions of the country whenever you first landed in Zvartnots airport? Because for me, I traveled and visited Armenia for the first time last summer, and I was told all the time before I went on my first trip, you'll never forget landing in your homeland, and you'll never forget walking out, smelling the air, meeting people. For your perspective, what was that like for you?
I think you miss, because the way the flight schedules are, you're always coming in at night.
Yes.
Because it's 8 or 9 o'clock. You've already flown for God knows, 20 hours. I think you get robbed because you don't get to see Mount Ararat when you land. I got to see when we left because we're leaving early in the morning and it's gorgeous. But I could just imagine flying into that airport and seeing Mount Ararat and
Yeah.
its magnificent glory.
Now
And and then that
you're
mountain
right.
has many, religious connotations.
Yes.
Because what? A Noah's Ark is.
Yes, it was
Noah's Ark's
biblically,
mountain,
that's where it was. That's where it landed
Yeah.
after the flood. That's
Yeah.
right. And you're absolutely right. I do remember now after our flight to Frankfurt and then to Armenia, it was late at night, and then when we were flying back, it was early in the morning. So we caught the sunrise as we're seeing
And it's
Mount
like
Ararat.
one of the most beautiful views I've ever seen in my life.
Got you. So I guess, would you say then the next morning, whenever you landed, that's when you got a chance to see Ararat?
Yes. When I will tell you that next day was great, but actually getting in at that time, and you're kind of wanting, okay, I want to acclimate myself to the timing. So Stephanie and I we got to the hotel and we went out and walked down to Republican Square. And we did a little walkabout just so we would be going to bed at whatever and getting our legs beneath us there in Armenia. But it was, just Yerevan is a pretty cosmopolitan city.
Yeah, especially, today, whenever I was there last year, it felt like a really, really bustling European city. And that, I think, you couldn't say that about the city maybe 15 or even 20 years ago.
Yeah, it's really come a long way. And one thing that I think is fantastic is folks in Europe, not just because there's a built-in tie with Russia and a lot of Russians coming to visit. And, and there's that, you're obviously going to always have that tie because it was a former Soviet republic. So I know a lot of Armenians know Russian.
Yep.
And a lot of kids will go to college in Russia. So there's that connection. But there's a lot of, people from Europe that are going to Yerevan to vacation, to explore.
Yeah.
And it
Either Yerevan or they're going to the natural spots like Takhtadjian, right?
Yes.
Or Lake Sevan even.
yes.
Now, did you get to see some of those other natural spots on top of doing the village stories? Were you guys able to go out to some
Oh
of those
yeah, I think our
outskirts?
first trip really was it was a whirlwind, and we were the Armenian Fund. We were escorted by them. We had a great guide. He was fantastic, and basically it was him, myself, Stephanie, and then our driver Aram. And Aram was just a kind of an old school dude. Somehow we figured out he was a New York Jets fan because he knows American football. But he was like a gruff old Armenian dude that would always be like, just
I can imagine, like a typical Armenian, older looking guy, but all of a sudden New York Jets.
Smoking a cigarette, all the time. But we literally drove in this little compact car all over Armenia for like 4 days. I mean, we started off, we left Yerevan, we went to, and you'll have to apologize as I get older, I forget names, but we went to that great, there's that, what is it? The tram that goes up. It's
Yes, the Tatev tram. I believe. Yes.
which was, the Armenian Alps. It was fantastic views.
Oh my gosh.
We did that. We stopped at a roadside little shack and Armenian vodka and whatever. I didn't try any. Stephanie had a lot of that. I just give me a Coca-Cola to be safe, But just things like that. We drove to Artsakh.
Yeah.
That was
you guys
crazy.
got to see the monument, the Papik and Tatik,
Yes,
which is the grandma.
probably one of my
monument.
favorite monuments that I've visited in the world.
Really?
It's fantastic.
That's one of the, honestly, it's one
The
of the
mother
regrets I have.
mother and father of Armenia,
Yeah.
essentially, and or grandmother and grandfather, however you want to take it. But very, very big place for people to go and get pictures. And I remember the last time we went to Armenia, when we were there, somebody was having a wedding
It's amazing.
right there, and we were wandering around, and they gave us some champagne to cheer the wedding that was going on. Also, Representative Jackie Spears just happened to be there on a tour with another representative from Southern California. And Jackie Spears is half Armenian.
That's right.
I don't know if you knew that, but and so she was there touring Artsakh, and we all know what has gone on in Artsakh. And I think it's a shame because Stepanakert is it was on its way to becoming not only a tourist destination, but kind of like the hub of that region.
Exactly. I mean, when I was back in Armenia and staying in this town called Masis with my family, there were some Artsakh kids and families that, when they were ethnically cleansed, that they had to find places to stay, and they were literally taken in by my uncle who owned the apartment complex area over there. And we would talk about, Stepanakert, and they would say that it was one of the cleanest cities that you would ever find.
I enjoyed walking around that city. Luckily, my wife was with me on one of the trips when we did go to Artsakh. There were beautiful art installations. We did you may have seen the story on the music school that they had there.
Yes.
These talented kids that are going and learning to become great musicians and singers. It's a shame to know that those beautiful places that I had visited are, God knows, they're probably rubble right now.
It's either rubble or they're being used as political photo ops, which I've seen a lot of documentation, obviously from the Azerbaijani side of Ilham Aliyev, the president, and a lot of other dignitaries from Azerbaijan just riding into Stepanakert, putting up their flags, taking photos, and then leaving. And then you look at the Stepanakert, where it's at right now, it's a ghost town. There's barely anybody living there. There's more animals there than people, and it's like, what was the point of all that, right? Now you have so many people that have been that have been pushed out of Artsakh. Some of them now, they're not even living in Armenia. How are they going to get back to their ancestral lands that they've been there for thousands of years? Mm-hmm.
What's even
too,
with a local tie too to that is that Monty
Melkonian.
I knew I was going to butcher his name.
No, I got you.
I know. But no, from Visalia,
yes,
who dropped everything to go fight in the original war after the Iron Curtain fell,
yes,
and the Soviet republics kind of dissipated, and there was that battle because there were Armenians. I think Stalin decided way back when that, hey, Artsakh, even though there's a bunch of Armenians here, we're going to give it to Azerbaijan.
Yep, exactly. That's what it was. And Woodrow Wilson was the Wilson Accords. I believe someone's going to correct me, but there was documentation to give that land back to Armenia, and no one visited it at all. And right when the Soviet Republic fell, there was already tension between Armenia and Azerbaijan. And once that happened, that's what spurred it.
And those guys fought, and they were able to achieve, I would say, independence, because they carved out their own country. Now, getting there from Armenia was difficult. The first time that we went, we had to go on the cover of the Night. The second time, a really funny story. So part of the crew, we were in a bus. The other part had gotten a rental car. Well, this was 2019. The rental car companies in Yerevan were like, we're not letting any of our cars go to Artsakh. So the engine literally cut outside of Artsakh in the middle of nowhere, and we had to wait till we could get these folks. So the rental car just kaput, right? We were out in the field, bunch of goats, took great picture taking opportunities, but the rental car would not be allowed into Artsakh. And then when they were in 2015, our guide, he told us, he's like, hey, at any moment, just be aware, especially when we went to Lake Sevan, that there could be sniper action from the Azerbaijanis because you're that close, you're on the border. Essentially.
And to this day, there's still reports. I literally read yesterday, at the time of recording, that the Sunnik provinces have already been reporting snipers and firing, especially at people who are trying to just be farmers.
Mm-hmm. It's trying to live their lives.
Exactly. Unfortunately, Kevin, we are running out of time right now. I just wanted to say thank you so much for joining me on the show, but honestly, also want to say thank you for being part of that team and bringing these stories to life that otherwise I don't think anybody else would have had that opportunity to do so.
Well, thank you. And I mean, like I said, when I say beats having a real job, getting the opportunity to go on these trips, I think it makes you a better person because you get more of a worldwide perspective, one, but two, it really makes me a better member of my community because so many of my fellow community members with Armenian roots, I can share in their story and I can tell their story.
Thank you. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to having you on the show one more time.
Awesome. We didn't even get to Gyumri, which was my favorite place.
And that's where my parents were born.
Yeah.
So episode 2.
Part 2, yes.
Yes, excellent. We'll get that going. Thank you so much, and we'll see you soon on the show.
Alrighty, my man.